If you're watching this, it's already too late for me. I know how that sounds melodramatic, maybe even desperate, but I need you to listen. I need you to understand that what happened to me inside TD Jake's mansion wasn't a dream or a breakdown or some viral stunt. I barely made it out alive, and I'm not even sure I'm the same person who walked in. I keep telling myself I'm safe now, that the worst is over, but every time I close my eyes, I see it. I see him, or what was wearing his face. I know you're curious. I know you want to know what happened. That's why you clicked, right? Maybe you think you're braver than me, or smarter, or just luckier. But there are things in that house no one should ever see. Things that don't belong in this world. Things that change you just by looking at them. I'm not talking about ghosts or demons or any of the usual internet horror fodder. I'm talking about something older, something that wears human skin like a costume and smiles with too many teeth. I used to laugh at stories like this. I used to think the world was simple work, bills, friends, the occasional weird DM from a fan. I thought I understood how reality worked. But that night, in that mansion, I learned how thin the walls really are. How easy it is to fall through the cracks. I know some of you are already scrolling to the comments, trying to guess what happened, or maybe you're thinking this is just another creepypasta. I wish it was. I wish I could forget what I saw, what I heard, what I felt crawling under my skin. But I can't. And if you're smart, you'll stop watching now. You'll walk away, and you'll never, ever try to find that house. But I know you won't. Curiosity is a curse. So, if you're still here, if you really want to know how it started, let me take you back. Let me start at the beginning, before the invitation arrived. Before all this, my life was painfully ordinary. I was just another content creator clawing for relevance in a sea of clickbait and algorithmic indifference. My days blurred together editing videos until my eyes burned, answering emails from brands that wanted me to hawk teeth whitening kits, and scrolling through endless notifications from people who either loved or hated me, sometimes both in the same breath. Rent was always due, my fridge was always empty, and my phone was always dying at the worst possible moment. If you've ever tried to make a living online, you know the grind. It's not glamorous. It's not even interesting most days. But I had my niche. I was the skeptical believer, the guy who'd investigate haunted houses, urban legends, and internet mysteries, but always with a raised eyebrow and a sarcastic comment. My channel was a weird mix of ghost hunting, debunking, and the occasional deep dive into the bizarre corners of the web. You guys remember the Shadow Man story? The one where I spent the night in that abandoned hospital and ended up running from a raccoon? Yeah, that was peak content for me. I still get DMs about the raccoon demon. Shout out to the 3 of you who keep sending me raccoon memes. You know who you are. I'd covered haunted houses before, but nothing like this. Most of the time, the scariest thing I found was mold or a really aggressive spider. I was curious about the supernatural, sure, but I never really believed in it. Not deep down. I thought the world made sense, that there were rules, and that if you looked hard enough, you could explain anything. Maybe that's why I kept chasing these stories, because I wanted to be proven wrong, just once. My friends thought I was nuts. My mom still calls to ask if I've found a real job yet. I'd laugh it off, tell her I was working on my next big break. But the truth is, I was stuck. The views were dropping, the sponsors were drying up, and I was starting to wonder if I'd missed my shot. I'd spend hours doom scrolling, watching other creators blow up over nothing, wondering what I was doing wrong. That's the thing about normal life, it's so easy to take for granted until it's gone. I used to complain about my boring routine, the endless cycle of bills and deadlines and half-baked video ideas. Now, I'd give anything to go back, anything to unsee what I saw. Then, one night, I got the DM that changed everything. It started with a notification at 2:13 a.m., the kind of hour when nothing good ever happens. I was half asleep, doom scrolling through my DMs, deleting spam and the usual collab requests when I saw it. A message from an account with a blue check mark and a name I recognized instantly, TD Jakes. Not a fan account, not a parody, the TD Jakes. The bishop, the author, the guy whose sermons my grandma used to play on repeat when I was a kid. I stared at the screen, convinced it was some kind of prank. But the message was short, direct, and unsettling in its formality. Hello, I've been following your work. I'd like to invite you to a private event at my home. Discretion is required. Details to follow. No emojis, no typos, not even a sign-off. Just a link to a private RSVP page and a digital NDA. I clicked, half expecting a phishing scam, but the site was legit slick, professional, with a countdown timer. And a list of special guests that read like a who's who of influencers, celebrities, and media personalities. I scrolled through the names, my heart thumping. Why me? Why now? I couldn't say no. Not when my channel was dying. Not when this could be the break I'd been waiting for. The NDA was the first red flag. It was pages long, full of legalese and ominous warnings. No recording devices. No social media posts. No discussion of the event or its contents under penalty of legal action. I'd signed NDAs before, but this one felt different, like it was less about protecting privacy and more about hiding something. Still, I signed. I told myself it was just standard celebrity paranoia. But a part of me, the part that still believed in rules and logic, felt a cold knot of unease. The next day, I got a follow-up email with the address, a dress code, formal but comfortable, and a car service confirmation. The event was described as a night of revelation and transformation. No further details. I Googled the address and stayed on the edge of the city, surrounded by woods, the kind of place you only see in movies or nightmares. I tried to laugh it off, but the jokes fell flat, even in my own head. I packed my bag with the essentials: phone, charger, backup battery, a tiny voice recorder I'd used for interviews. The NDA said I couldn't record, but I kept my phone on anyway. Old habits die hard, and if there was a story here, I wasn't going to miss it. I told myself I was being paranoid, that this was just another influencer event, another chance to network and maybe snag a few collabs. But the closer the date got, the more the unease grew. I started having weird dreams, shadows moving in the corners, voices whispering my name, a door that wouldn't stay closed. The night before the event, I barely slept. I kept checking the invitation, looking for some clue, some sign that this was all a mistake. But everything was in order. The car arrived right on time. A sleek black SUV with tinted windows and a driver who didn't say a word. As we pulled away from my apartment, I watched the city lights fade and tried to ignore the feeling that I was being driven somewhere I'd never come back from. I should have trusted my gut, but curiosity won. The drive felt endless, the city dissolving into a blur of trees and darkness. My phone lost signal somewhere past the last gas station, and the silence in the car grew thick, almost physical. I tried to make small talk with the driver, but he just stared straight ahead, hands locked at 10 and 2, eyes hidden behind mirrored sunglasses even though it was well past sunset. I gave up and watched the woods slide by, the trees pressed close to the road like they were listening. When we finally turned onto a long, winding driveway, I caught my first glimpse of the mansion. It looked like a palace, all white stone and soaring columns, lit up against the night like something out of a dream or a hallucination. The kind of place you see on magazine covers, the kind of place you imagine is full of laughter and music and secrets. But even from a distance, something was off. The lights were too bright, too cold, casting long, sharp shadows that seemed to move when I wasn't looking directly at them. The windows were all dark, except for a few on the upper floors, where I thought I saw someone or something watching. The car stopped in front of a massive double door, carved with symbols I didn't recognize. Not just the usual swirls and flourishes, but shapes that made my eyes ache if I stared too long. The driver got out, opened my door, and gestured for me to follow. He didn't speak, didn't even look at me. I stepped out, the gravel crunching under my shoes, and tried to steady my breathing. A line of staff waited by the entrance, all dressed in matching black suits, faces expressionless, eyes blank and glassy. They moved in perfect unison, bowing slightly as I approached. I tried to smile, to make a joke, but none of them reacted. Their eyes slid over me like I wasn't even there. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. Inside, the opulence was overwhelming. Marble floors, gold fixtures, chandeliers that looked like they belonged in a cathedral. The air smelled faintly of incense and something metallic, sharp and sweet at the same time. I caught glimpses of other guests, beautiful people in expensive clothes, laughing too loudly, their smiles stretched a little too wide. I recognized a few faces from YouTube, a couple of actors, even a politician I'd seen on the news. But no one seemed relaxed. Their eyes darted around the room, lingering on the staff, on the doors, on each other. Everywhere I looked, there were more of those strange symbols carved into the woodwork, woven into the rugs, even etched into the glass of the windows. I tried to take a picture, but my phone glitched, the screen flickering with static before shutting off completely. I slipped it back into my pocket, heart pounding. The staff moved among us, offering drinks on silver trays. I noticed their hands long, pale fingers, nails perfectly manicured but somehow wrong. Like they'd been shaped, not grown. One of them brushed past me, and I felt a jolt of cold, like static electricity, but deeper, almost inside my bones. The conversations around me were stilted, full of nervous laughter and half-finished sentences. Every so often, someone would glance at the windows, or at the shadows pooling in the corners, and their face would go blank for a moment, like they were listening to something only they could hear. I tried to catch someone's eye, to ask if they felt it too, but everyone seemed determined to pretend nothing was wrong. Did anyone else see the shadows moving? I wanted to ask, but the words stuck in my throat. I felt like I was underwater, everything muffled and slow, the pressure building behind my eyes. A bell chimed somewhere deep in the house, low and resonant, and the staff began to herd us toward a grand staircase. I hesitated, glancing back at the doors, but they were already closing, the sound echoing through the marble halls, a heavy, final sound, like the lid of a coffin. They led me inside, and the doors closed behind me with a sound I'll never forget. The staircase led us to a ballroom that looked like it had been ripped from a royal palace and dropped into the middle of the woods. Crystal chandeliers hung from a ceiling painted with angels and monsters locked in some eternal struggle. The walls were lined with mirrors, but the reflections seemed a half-second behind, like the room itself was lagging. A string quartet played in the corner, their music beautiful but just a little off-key, the notes twisting in ways that made my teeth ache. The guests were a who's who of internet royalty and real-world fame. I spotted a beauty vlogger with 20 million subscribers, her makeup flawless but her hands shaking as she clutched a glass of champagne. A TikTok comedian, usually all bravado and swagger, stood by the window, staring out into the darkness with a look of pure dread. There was a pro athlete, a couple of actors, a tech billionaire whose face I'd only ever seen on magazine covers. Everyone was dressed to impress, but the glamour felt brittle, like a mask about to crack. I tried to blend in, making small talk with a travel influencer who kept glancing over her shoulder. "Nice place, huh?" I said, forcing a smile. She laughed, but it sounded hollow. "Yeah, if you like haunted castles. I swear, I keep seeing things out of the corner of my eye." She leaned in, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Don't drink anything. Seriously." I saw one of the staff pour something into the punch bowl, and it didn't look right. I nodded, my mouth suddenly dry. I looked around and noticed that most people were holding their drinks, but not actually sipping. The staff glided through the crowd, silent and watchful, their eyes never quite meeting anyone else's. A YouTuber I recognized from a ghost hunting channel sidled up to me, his usual bravado replaced by a nervous energy. "You ever get the feeling we're not supposed to be here?" he muttered, eyes darting to the mirrors. "Like, this is all for show, but the real party's somewhere else." Before I could answer, a sharp laugh cut through the room. An actress in a sequin dress was telling a story, her words tumbling out too fast, her eyes wide and glassy. And then I said, "That's not a ghost, that's my ex-husband." The people around her laughed, but it was the kind of laughter you hear at funerals, forced, desperate, a way to fill the silence. I drifted from group to group, picking up fragments of conversation. "Did you see the staff's hands? Why do the clocks all say different times?" I heard someone crying upstairs. "No, I haven't seen my plus one since we got here." The undercurrent of fear was impossible to ignore, no matter how hard everyone tried to pretend otherwise. Every so often, someone would check their phone, only to frown at the blank screen. I glanced at my own still dead, no matter how many times I pressed the power button. The only clocks in the room were old-fashioned, ornate things, and none of them matched. One said 8:13, another 11:47, another spun its hands in slow, lazy circles. Why did everyone keep checking the time? What were they waiting for? A man in a designer suit caught my eye and beckoned me over. He looked familiar, but I couldn't place him. "You're the skeptic, right? The one with the YouTube channel?" he asked, his voice low. "Yeah, that's me," I said, trying to sound casual. He leaned in, his breath hot against my ear. "If you get a chance to leave, take it. Don't wait for the main event. Trust me." His eyes flicked to the staff, then back to me. "They're not what they seem." Before I could ask what he meant, he melted back into the crowd, swallowed up by the swirl of bodies and music. I felt a prickle of sweat on my neck, the kind you get when you realize you're being watched. The quartet's music grew louder, more frantic, as if trying to drown out the rising tension. The mirrors seemed to ripple, the reflections warping and twisting. I caught a glimpse of myself, pale, wide-eyed, looking more like a ghost than a guest. A hush fell over the room, sudden and absolute. The music stopped mid-note, the conversations died, and every head turned toward the grand staircase. I felt the air shift, heavy with anticipation and something darker, something hungry. Then T.D. Jakes himself appeared, and the room fell silent. He descended the staircase with the kind of presence that made the air itself seem to bend around him. T.D. Jakes larger than life. Every inch the celebrity pastor, the motivational titan, the man whose words had filled stadiums and living rooms alike. He wore a suit so perfectly tailored it looked like it had been poured onto him, and his smile was wide, dazzling, almost too bright for the dim light of the ballroom. But there was something off, something I couldn't quite name. Maybe it was the way he moved, too smooth, too precise, like he was gliding rather than walking. Or maybe it was his eyes. They didn't blink. Not once. Not even as he swept his gaze over the crowd, making each of us feel seen and exposed all at once. "Welcome, friends," he said, his voice rolling out over us, warm and deep and commanding. "I'm so glad you could join me for this special night. You are the chosen few, the ones who have dared to look beyond the surface, to question, to seek. Tonight, you'll see the truth behind the curtain." A ripple of unease passed through the room. I glanced at the other guests, saw the way their faces flickered between awe and fear. This was the T.D. Jakes everyone knew, the charismatic leader, the master storyteller. But there was a sharpness to his words, a weight that pressed down on us, making it hard to breathe. He walked among us, shaking hands, clapping shoulders, his touch lingering just a moment too long. When he reached me, his smile widened, and I felt a chill crawl up my spine. "Ah, the skeptic," he said softly, "just for me. I've been waiting to meet you. You have a gift, you know, the gift of seeing what others ignore." I tried to laugh it off, but my voice caught in my throat. His eyes, dark, bottomless, locked onto mine, and for a moment, I felt like I was falling. He turned back to the crowd, raising his arms. "Tonight is about transcendence, about becoming more than human. You've all achieved so much in your lives: fame, fortune, influence. But there is another level, a higher calling. Tonight, I will show you the path." The staff began to move, gliding through the crowd, collecting untouched drinks, guiding us into a loose semicircle around the staircase. The mirrors on the walls seemed to darken, swallowing our reflections. The music had stopped, but I could still hear something a low hum, almost like chanting, coming from somewhere deep in the house. TD Jakes continued, his voice growing softer, more intimate. You've all felt it, haven't you? The emptiness, the hunger for something real. The world out there is a stage, a performance. But here, tonight, you will see what lies beneath. You will become part of something eternal. He paused, letting the words sink in. I saw people shifting uncomfortably, glancing at each other, at the staff, at the doors that now seemed impossibly far away. Follow me, he said at last, his smile never faltering. Let me show you the heart of this house. The place where the veil is thinnest, where you can touch the truth. He turned and began to walk, the staff falling in behind him, their movements perfectly synchronized. One by one, the guests followed, drawn by curiosity, by fear, by something they couldn't name. I hesitated, every instinct screaming at me to run, but my feet moved anyway. He invited us deeper into the mansion, to a place he called the heart. We followed TD Jakes and his silent entourage out of the ballroom. The crowd pressed together in a nervous, glittering knot. The staff moved ahead of us, opening doors that seemed to appear out of nowhere, their faces as blank as ever. The air changed as soon as we left the main hall, thicker, colder, tinged with a scent I couldn't place. The music and laughter faded behind us, replaced by the soft shuffle of feet and the low, almost inaudible hum that seemed to pulse from the walls themselves. The corridor we entered was lined with portraits, but the faces in the paintings were blurred, their eyes scratched out or painted over. The carpet was impossibly plush, swallowing the sound of our footsteps, and the lights overhead flickered in a rhythm that didn't match any pattern I knew. I glanced at the other guests, searching for some sign that they noticed how wrong everything felt, but most of them kept their eyes fixed on the floor, as if afraid to look too closely at their surroundings. I swear the hallway got longer the more we walked. At first I thought it was just my nerves, the way fear can stretch time and space, but after a while I realized we'd passed the same cracked face, 3 times the same faded tapestry with symbols that made my skin crawl. I tried to count the doors, but they kept changing. Sometimes there were 3 on the left, sometimes 5, sometimes none at all. The rational part of my brain screamed that it was impossible, that I must be confused, but the deeper we went, the less sense anything made. We passed through a room where the ceiling arched impossibly high, vanishing into darkness. The walls were covered in mirrors, but none of them showed our reflections. Instead, they flickered with images of empty rooms, endless corridors, and just for a moment something crawling along the ceiling, too fast to see clearly. I blinked and it was gone. The group grew quieter, the forced cheer from earlier replaced by a tense, brittle silence. I heard someone whisper, "Where's Jenna?" and realized with a jolt that one of the guests was missing. I tried to remember when I'd last seen her, the travel influencer, with a nervous laugh, but her face slipped away from my memory like water through my fingers. I looked around, but no one would meet my eyes. Someone was missing, but no one would say who. The staff led us through another door, and suddenly we were in a library, the shelves stretching up and up, filled with books whose titles shifted when I tried to read them. The air was thick with dust and the scent of old paper, but underneath it was something else, something sweet and rotten. I reached out to touch a book, and it shuddered under my fingers, the cover pulsing like a heartbeat. I jerked my hand back, heart pounding. We kept moving, the rooms growing stranger with every step. A dining room where the table was set for a feast, but the plates were filled with ash. A conservatory where the plants pressed against the glass, their leaves twitching as if they were trying to escape. A hallway lined with clocks, all ticking at different speeds, none of them showing the right time. I tried to keep track of our path, but the turns and twists made no sense. It was like the house was folding in on itself, reshaping to keep us lost. The whispers started as we passed through a narrow corridor, the walls so close I could feel them breathing. At first, I thought it was just the wind, but the words grew clearer, threading through the group like a cold draft. Don't look back. Don't look back. I glanced over my shoulder anyway, and for a split second, I saw a shadow dart across the wall, impossibly tall and thin, its eyes burning in the darkness. The guests were unraveling. The beauty vlogger clung to the arm of the tech billionaire, her nails digging into his skin. The ghost-hunting YouTuber muttered to himself, eyes darting from door to door. The pro athlete tried to force a laugh, but it came out as a strangled gasp. I felt my own grip on reality slipping, the rational part of my mind screaming that none of this was possible, that houses didn't move, that shadows didn't whisper. But the house didn't care about logic. It bent the rules, twisted the world into something unrecognizable. I tried to focus on TD Jakes, his figure always just ahead, moving with that same unnatural grace. He never looked back, never slowed down, as if he knew exactly where he was going. Finally, we reached a door none of us remembered seeing before. The door was unlike any we'd seen before, tall, arched, carved with those same impossible symbols, but deeper, more intricate, as if the wood itself was alive and writhing beneath the surface. The staff stopped, forming a silent line on either side, their faces as blank as ever. TD Jakes turned to us, his smile wider than ever, and for a moment, I thought I saw something flicker beneath his skin, a ripple of movement that didn't belong. He pressed his palm to the door, and it swung open without a sound. The room beyond was circular, domed, lit by a single chandelier that dripped with candles burning a sickly green. The walls were covered in murals, scenes of people kneeling, faces upturned in adoration, their eyes black and empty. At the center of the room was a stone altar, slick with something dark and glistening. The air was thick, heavy, humming with a power that made my teeth ache. We shuffled inside, drawn by a force I couldn't fight. The door closed behind us, sealing with a finality that made my heart drop. I tried to move back, but my feet wouldn't obey. The staff filed in, circling the room, their eyes fixed on us now, hungry and unblinking. TD Jakes stood before the altar, arms raised. His voice boomed, echoing off the stone, filling the space with a resonance that vibrated in my bones. Welcome to the heart. Welcome to the place where the veil is thinnest, where the truth is revealed. Tonight, you will witness what lies beyond the flesh. Tonight, you will become more than you are. The guests pressed together, some whispering prayers, others weeping silently. The tech billionaire tried to pull out his phone, but it shattered in his hand, the pieces falling to the floor like broken teeth. The beauty vlogger clung to the ghost hunter, her eyes wide with terror. I felt my own breath coming in short, sharp gasps, my mind screaming for logic, for reason, for anything to make this make sense. TD Jakes began to chant, the words twisting in my ears, ancient and guttural, a language that scraped at the inside of my skull. The staff joined in, their voices rising in a chorus that was both beautiful and horrifying. The candles flickered, casting shadows that writhed and danced along the walls, growing longer, sharper, until they seemed to reach for us. Then, as the chanting reached a fever pitch, TD Jakes turned to face us fully. His smile split wider, impossibly wide, and his skin began to peel away like a mask. It didn't tear or bleed, it simply slid off, revealing something beneath that was not human. His face stretched and twisted, the features melting into a shape that was both familiar and utterly alien. Eyes too many, too dark opened across his face, blinking in slow, deliberate unison. His hands elongated, fingers splitting and curling into claws that shimmered with a wet, oily sheen. The staff followed suit, their own disguises sloughing off to reveal forms that defied description, limbs bending the wrong way, mouths opening where there should be none, eyes blooming like flowers across their skin. The guests screamed, some collapsing to the floor, others trying to run, but the room seemed to close in, the walls pulsing and breathing, trapping us in place. I realized we weren't guests. We were offerings. T.D. Jakes' no, the thing that wore his skin, spoke again, its voice layered and echoing, as if 1,000 mouths were speaking through him. You have been chosen. Your faith, your fame, your hunger, they feed us. You will be remade. You will be part of the eternal. The staff moved among us, forcing us to our knees before the altar. I tried to fight, but my limbs were heavy, my mind clouded by the chanting that now seemed to come from inside my own head. The altar pulsed, the dark liquid on its surface bubbling and steaming. One by one, the guests were dragged forward, their screams muffled by invisible hands. The tech billionaire was first, his eyes rolled back, his mouth stretched in a silent scream as the thing that was T.D. Jakes pressed a clawed hand to his forehead. There was a flash of light, a sound like tearing fabric, and then he was gone, just gone, as if he'd never existed. The beauty vlogger was next, then the ghost hunter, then the actress in the sequin dress. Each time, the ritual grew more frenzied, the chanting louder, the shadows deeper. I felt something inside me unraveling, a thread being pulled loose, and I knew if it snapped, I'd be lost forever. When it was my turn, I was dragged to the altar, forced to look into the thing's eyes, so many eyes, all-seeing, all-knowing. It leaned close, its breath cold and sweet, and whispered, "You see, don't you? You always saw." I felt its hand on my head, cold and heavy, pressing down, pushing me toward the altar. My vision blurred, the world spinning, the chanting filling my ears until it was all I could hear, all I could think. I saw flashes, memories, nightmares, things I'd never lived but somehow remembered. I saw myself, split open, remade, something else crawling out of my skin. But somewhere, deep inside, a spark of resistance flared. I remembered who I was, what I'd come here to do. I fought back, clawing my way out of the darkness, refusing to let go. I had to escape, but the mansion wouldn't let me go. I don't remember how I broke free. One moment, I was on my knees, the thing that wore T.D. Jakes' face pressing me down, its claws digging into my scalp. The next, I was stumbling backward, gasping for air, the chanting replaced by a deafening silence. The altar was empty, the other guests gone, or worse. I caught a glimpse of the beauty vlogger's sequin dress, crumpled on the floor, but she was nowhere to be seen. The staff, those inhuman things, were circling the room, their eyes fixed on me, mouths opening in silent screams. I ran. I didn't think, didn't look back. I just ran, crashing through the door and into the corridor beyond. The house had changed. The walls pulsed like veins, red and wet, throbbing in time with my heartbeat. The floor squelched beneath my feet, sticky and warm. The lights overhead flickered, casting shadows that twisted and writhed, reaching for me with long, grasping fingers. I turned corner after corner, but the hallways stretched and bent, folding in on themselves, leading me back to where I started. Doors appeared and vanished, some opening onto rooms filled with darkness, others onto impossible landscapes, an endless staircase spiraling down into blackness. A library where the books screamed when I looked at them, a dining room where the guests sat frozen, their faces blank and empty, their mouths stuffed with ash. I heard footsteps behind me, heavy, dragging, inhuman. I ducked into a side corridor, pressing myself against the wall, trying to quiet my ragged breathing. The wallpaper crawled beneath my hands, patterns shifting and twisting into faces that leered and whispered, "Stay, stay, stay." Their voices slithered into my ears, cold and oily. I forced myself forward, desperate for any sign of escape. I passed a mirror and caught a glimpse of my own reflection, except it wasn't me. The eyes were wrong. Too dark, too deep, and the mouth was smiling, even though I wasn't. I smashed the mirror with my fist, shards scattering across the floor, but the image lingered, grinning up at me from the broken glass. Somewhere ahead, I heard someone calling my name. At first, I thought it was another guest, but as I got closer, I realized it was my own voice, echoing from behind a closed door. I hesitated, every instinct screaming at me to run, but curiosity, always my curse, pulled me closer. I reached for the handle, but the door melted away beneath my hand, revealing only darkness. The house was alive, and it was hunting me. The walls closed in, the ceiling pressing lower, the floor tilting beneath my feet. I stumbled, fell, scrambled to my feet again. I saw flashes of the other guests, some running, some crawling, some being swallowed by the walls themselves. The staff moved through the chaos, their forms shifting and warping, their eyes always watching. I tried to remember the way out, but every path twisted back on itself. Every door led to another nightmare. My hope flickered, nearly snuffed out by the overwhelming horror pressing in on all sides. But somewhere, deep inside, a stubborn spark refused to die. I kept moving, kept searching, refusing to give in. Then, ahead of me, I saw a light and exit, maybe, but something was waiting for me. The light flickered at the end of the corridor, pale and cold, promising freedom. I staggered toward it, every muscle screaming, the house groaning and shuddering around me. I could feel it trying to pull me back, walls stretching, floors buckling, shadows reaching for my ankles. But I kept going, driven by a desperation I'd never known before. Then he was there, blocking the way. T.D. Jakes, or what was left of him. His form shifted in the half-light, flickering between the man I'd seen on TV and the thing I'd seen at the altar. His eyes, so many eyes, watched me from every angle, each one reflecting a different version of my own terrified face. He didn't move, didn't speak at first, just stood there, smiling that impossible smile, as if he'd been waiting for me all along. I tried to back away, but the corridor behind me had vanished, replaced by a wall of pulsing, living flesh. I was trapped. He stepped closer, his voice echoing inside my head, soft and cold. "You want to leave?" he said. "You want to go back to your little life, your little stories. But nothing comes for free. Not here." I swallowed, my mouth dry as dust. "What do you want?" He leaned in, his breath icy on my skin. "Tell me your darkest secret, and I'll let you go. Give me something real. Something you've never told anyone, not even yourself." I hesitated, every instinct screaming at me to lie, to run, to fight. But there was no escape, no way out but through. I thought of all the things I'd hidden, all the truths I'd buried. I thought of the fear that had driven me here, the hunger for something more, the emptiness I'd tried to fill with stories and clicks and borrowed courage. So I told him. I told him the thing I'd never said out loud, the thing I'd never even dared to write in my private notes. I told him about the night I almost gave up, the night I stood on the edge of my own darkness and thought about letting go. I told him about the loneliness, the shame, the secret hope that maybe, just maybe, something out there would notice me, would save me. He listened, his eyes never blinking, his smile never fading. When I finished, he reached out and touched my forehead, cold and gentle. "Thank you," he whispered. "That will do." I woke up on my own doorstep, clothes torn, shoes caked with mud, the taste of ash still thick on my tongue. The city was waking up, the sky bruised with dawn, and for a moment I thought maybe I'd dreamed it all. But my phone was gone, my hands were shaking, and there was a mark on my forehead, faint, almost invisible, but burning cold whenever I touched it. I stumbled inside, locked every door, and sat in the shower until the water ran cold, scrubbing at my skin like I could wash the memory away. Days passed, but the world didn't feel real anymore. I tried to go back to my routine, editing videos, answering emails, pretending to laugh at the same old memes. But everything felt hollow, like I was watching my life from the wrong side of a window. I'd catch myself staring at the walls, waiting for them to pulse, listening for whispers in the pipes. Sometimes, I'd wake up in the middle of the night, convinced I heard footsteps in the hallway or saw a shadow flicker across the ceiling. I started leaving the lights on, sleeping with the TV blaring, anything to drown out the silence. People noticed. My friends said I looked tired, jumpy, older somehow. My mom left voicemails, her voice tight with worry, asking if I was okay. I lied, of course. I told everyone I was just burned out, that I needed a break from the internet. But the truth was, I didn't know how to explain what had happened. I didn't know how to tell them that sometimes, when I looked in the mirror, I saw his eyes staring back at me, dark, endless, hungry. I tried to convince myself it was over, that I'd escaped. But the feeling never left. I'd catch glimpses of things out of the corner of my eye, shapes that didn't belong, faces in the crowd that looked too familiar. Sometimes, I'd hear my own voice whispering secrets I didn't remember telling. I started to wonder if I'd really made it out, or if some part of me was still trapped in that house, kneeling before that altar, waiting to be remade. I don't know what I left behind in that house, or what followed me out. Maybe it took something from me, a memory, a piece of my soul. Or maybe it left something behind, a seed of itself, growing in the dark corners of my mind. But that's not the worst part. I thought I could outrun it. I thought if I kept my head down, if I never spoke about what happened, it would fade like a nightmare in the daylight. But the world doesn't work that way, not anymore. Not after what I saw. Not after what I brought back. A week after I escaped, I started getting messages. Not from friends or family, but from strangers, people I'd never met. People who followed my channel or stumbled across my old videos. At first, it was just a trickle. Hey, did you get a weird DM from someone claiming to be TD Jakes? Is this some kind of ARG? I got an invitation to a private event, should I go? The messages grew more frantic, more desperate. Screenshots of invitations, all with the same language, the same NDA, the same promise of a night of revelation and transformation. Some of the usernames I recognized, some I didn't. Some of them stopped replying altogether. I tried to warn them. I told them to block the sender, to delete the message, to forget they ever saw it. But curiosity is a curse, and I know how it feels to want answers, to want to believe you're special, chosen, different. I know how easy it is to say yes. So I'm telling you now, directly, if you get the DM, don't open it. Don't RSVP. Don't even think about it. There are things in this world that feed on our hunger for meaning, for connection, for something more. They wear familiar faces, speak in familiar voices, and they know exactly what you want to hear. Check your inbox. You might already have the message. If you do, delete it. Burn your phone if you have to. And if you've seen what I've seen, if you've been to that house, if you've heard the chanting, if you've looked into those eyes, comment below. I need to know I'm not alone. I need to know there's still a way out. Because this isn't over. Not for me. Not for you. The invitation is still out there, spreading like a virus, waiting for the next curious soul to say yes. And if you're watching this, if you're still here, maybe it's already too late.